Treasurer, Mr. Klein, to go ahead and lead us through the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To honor our veterans, do we have any veterans amongst us? Could you please stand up? A warm welcome to all our guests. Honorable directors, we have actually just one, Mr. Tynan, that is attending today. Officers, committee chairs, honored guest speakers, and most importantly, dear members and guests. President Obama, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid. I know those three names you hate. They have just passed the healthcare reform, as we know. They're spending our great nation into bankruptcy. Now there's talk that they're itching to work towards immigration reform to allow illegal immigrants a path to citizenship, thereby setting a precedence. Announcing to the world that while our laws may consider illegal immigration to be a crime, but we'll just go ahead and let you break the law and reward you for that. Their audacity and ignorance has reached new heights, where they are trying to make this a race issue, as if the Latin Americans somehow approve of illegal immigration. How insulting. Cap and trade, government expansion, apologies to terrorist nations, snubbing the president of our key ally Israel, reducing Medicare benefits for our seniors, making disparaging remarks towards the nation's Supreme Court at State of the Union, indoctrination of schools, curriculum from Obama, and the list goes on. I find myself asking the question, why are they doing it? Because they can. Because they believe these are the right things to do. Most importantly, because we are allowing them to do that. How did it get this bad? In 2000, we were handed a majority in the House, a majority in the Senate, and the presidency. In 8 years, we squandered our advantage and lost all three. We somehow managed to convince the independents and many Republicans that GOP was not the right answer. Why did that happen? It happened because the Republicans that we elected to office did not conduct themselves as true Republicans. We operated like a party that thrived in the glory of pork barrel spending. Our elected officials backed self-serving and short-sighted earmarks, and we entangled ourselves in nation building. In essence, our elected officials lost their way and veered off our true conservative Republican principles. So what do we do now? How do we take our country back? We can do that by electing statesmen and women that truly represent our Republican principles. We can do that by going out there and supporting candidates that believe in those Republican principles, by knocking on doors, waving signs for them, volunteering at their phone banks, etc. To that end, we have an immediate opportunity to help. We have an opportunity to elect one such Republican, Ed Lynch, to U.S. Congress from District 19th on next Tuesday. Tim Dornblazer is here from the Lynch campaign. Would you please stand here? Please go ahead and Tim, I'm not inviting you to speak. Please see Tim after the meeting and sign up to volunteer. You can make phone calls without leaving your house. Let's get busy making sure that we do not squander another opportunity that has been presented to us. We have three wonderful guest speakers today. My good friend from Tampa, Pam Bondi, is here. She's running for Florida's Attorney General. We have Robert Lowry, running for U.S. Congress from And we have another good friend of mine, Dr. Anthony Japor, running for state representative from District 107. We also have some of our elected officials in attendance. Commissioner/board member of the school district of Broward County and South Broward Hospital District, Kevin Tynan. He's here. We have Commissioner John Sims from Cooper City here. And we have some candidates. Chris Zadie, running for County Commission seat 8. Chris is running for the seat that Diana Wasserman Rubin is vacating. We also have Steve Brightcruz. He's running for the same seat. We have Jeanette Nunez, State House 112. And we have Bernard Sensorique. Before I invite today's guest speakers to the podium, we have some business to conduct. Madam Secretary, you want to go ahead and share the minutes from the last meeting? Sure. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and invite the speakers in. Before I do that, I want to share a couple of things. Each of tonight's guest speakers is going to be speaking for about 15 minutes, and then there'll be 5 minutes for Q&A. Please do not interrupt the speakers mid-speech. You will have ample opportunity to ask questions and answers at the end. Also, do not argue with speakers, please. Respectfully ask the question. And base your opinion on what you hear from us. So I request, well, I know that Robert Lowry had requested he wanted to go first. Is that what you want to do? Okay, then I'm going to ask Lynn Warwick to come to the podium and introduce Robert Lowry.
We're all glad to see Mr. Lowry is running for Florida District 20, which is currently occupied by the regrettable Debbie Wilson. I say regrettable because they told me
We can't hear back there. You know, we can't hear at all.
mic is out.
Yeah.
Mr. Robert Lowry is running for Florida District 20, which is currently occupied by the regrettable Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is holding a town hall meeting tonight to celebrate her part in Obamacare, and who firmly believes she will be the next female president, or the first female president of the United States. She and Hillary should have a little fun with that. Mr. Robert Lowry has been a Broward County resident for the last 15 years. He's currently living in Hollywood with his wife Elizabeth, and he has 2 children. He's president and CEO of Lowry Group Properties, a real estate development company. Mr. Robert Lowry was born in Philadelphia in 1959, moved to Cocoa Beach, Florida in 1969, the Florida connection, and returned to Delaware in 1978. During his years at the University of Delaware, he traveled to East Berlin, Prague, and other parts of Eastern Europe where he met the reality of socialism and had an inclination to rethink his political opinions of the time. He made a dramatic change and has since been a conservative. And so powerful was the impact of his experience that when he returned, he decided to major in economics. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and a firm commitment to free market capitalism. His first job was as a financial planner, where he met reality in the crash of October 1987. When offered a job in a totally new field, he began rolling up his sleeves and learning the business from the ground up. His watchword has ever since been, you can't manage what you haven't done yourself. How can you tell how your workers are doing if you don't know how to do the job yourself? During his career, he's demonstrated an entrepreneurial spirit, solving problems, he has solved a larger problem. For example, in caring for his grandmother, experiencing difficulties which required financial or physical assistance. He sought appropriate living facilities for her, and as many of us have had this same problem, same experience in trying to find suitable places for our seniors. He was not satisfied with what he found, and rather than turning this around, he developed the facility himself, the kind of facility he sought for his grandmother to provide to other people's senior relatives. He combined the continuity of care that a large facility can offer with a caring atmosphere of a smaller community. Over time, he's expanded that model to 3 communities, 300 beds, and over 100 employees. One of the things that I like about this man's candidacy is that he is actually run a business and man payroll. For him, issues are not academic. They are realities that impact every person in the district he seeks to serve. By his experience, he knows intimately the costs of intrusion of government on both business and personal life. The myriad forms and paperwork that is required without compensation, tax requirements levied on business, these exact a toll not only in money and time, but in liberty and in privacy. Mr. Lowry's stated model is that of our country's founders, who believed that politics are only part of life and not the greatest part. He proposes to use his experience to serve his community and then rejoin that community to live under the laws that he himself has passed. This in itself makes him a rare bird indeed in our current state of elite political direction. I give you Mr. Robert Lowry.
I don't have to say anything. I can go home now. I think that was great. Without the microphone, I'm going to stand out here if that's okay. All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to take care of a little bit of housekeeping first. I'd like to invite everybody to dinner. Gotta love that. April 17th, we're having a new thing on a monthly or every 5-6 weeks called RCDC, which is Robert's Conservative Dinner Club. When I'm out in my district, I've been doing a lot of meet and greets and in people's living rooms and dining rooms, and one thing has just transcended is that there's a lot of people that think the way we do, yet they don't know who to talk to because their neighbors might not think that way. And so we decided, well, you know, let's get together once a month and hang out and just eat some dinner and have some pretty good conservative talk and a lot of laughs. Although, if you're feeling like I do this week, I'm not really laughing. It's been a black month for America, if you ask me. I'm running against a woman who's having a town hall 15 minutes away from here, but wouldn't come back in August, although she was boasting in July she was going to pass that health care reform before the August recess. She didn't pass it then, not because she could, because she couldn't. Because we all stood up. And we heard a little bit about the GOP. Do you know the GOP means Grand Old Party? That was started in 1854, but named the GOP in 1857 because it went back to conservative principles of which this nation was founded on. People came up from the roots of slavery and said, this is wrong, and we're going to make it right, and elected its first president of 1860. That's the Republican Party. And I see many of you sitting here, and I've been to this meeting, and let me tell you, the people that haven't been here before, this is the toughest crowd. So I'm not going to take 15 minutes to speak. I'm only going to take about 5 or 7 and open up the rest to questions, because nobody asks tougher questions than this crowd. Ms. Nunez will testify to that. But we're at a troubled time. We are at a crossroads I've never seen in this country, and I'm frightened not just for my children, but for this young man. I went to his high school, spoke to his colleagues. I'm scared to death of what's happening in our schools. When you see a sign like that to keep our school safe, you can make a difference. Well, heck yeah, you can make a difference. It's called self-responsibility. That's what founded this country. That's what Jefferson encapsulated in the Declaration of Independence when he wrote about the natural law. But it goes back further than that in this great nation. It goes back further because when people stepped foot upon America, they were different. They were different because they came from a country that, bad piece of paper, I need a blank, that you were who your name said you were. And that's as far as you're going to go in your lot in life. But not in this country. This is the only country in the world that you get a blank slate. You are who you can be or want to be. And a little bit of that went away this past month. And we have some lady down there by Debbie Wasserman Schultz celebrating it at a town hall meeting that she didn't have the chutzpah to come back and meet and ask for our opinion about what to do with our health care, how to treat our children, how to treat our grandparents and our parents. Instead, she's down there holding some kind of press conference. See, she invited 180,000 people. I have 200 volunteers down there tonight. 200 people, and called in to me. There's only room for 300 people in that room. She sent out 180 invitations. He's probably talking to him now. 180 invitations and seating for 300. That's an insult to this district. That's an insult to you. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. There's 13 stripes on that flag representing each of the 13 original colonies. Those people, they fought, bled, and died for less tyranny what that woman put in a health care bill. They fought over 2 cents on a pound of tea and chucked it in the river or bed or whatever it was. What are we doing? What are we doing? I just don't need your vote. I need your commitment. We need to get Ed Lynch elected in a week. We need to sound a fire up into Washington, D.C. that we're not going to do this anymore. We are sick and tired of politics as usual. We are sick and tired of the career politician. We are sick and tired of being told what's good for us and our family. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope she's wearing a red coat tonight because I think that's the only appropriate attire for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And I got a feeling that those people that fought, died, and bled in this nation for less tyranny, I wonder if those people would even sign the Declaration of Independence or the Articles of Confederation or even the Constitution of this great nation, knowing that you're going to get more tyranny from the capital they're creating than the government that they were running from. We got people coming to Miami or $30,400 a couple. Isn't that right, Bernard?
Yes, sir.
An Obama fundraiser. People in our district, our community, coughing up 30 grand. I'm having trouble getting a $100 donation. Bernard, you're having trouble getting a $100 donation. But people are willing to cough up 30 grand to have a dinner with my president? I need your help. This is a call to arms. This isn't funny anymore. We are now serious. We've got to take our country back. We don't have a choice. Your children's children is at stake. There's nowhere else to run. And as what a Cuban man came up to me just 3 weeks ago and says, where am I going to raft to next? I don't know. We are the last bastion of hope. Israel is the front lines of this Islamic war. Yet as Israel goes, we go. We are the last bastion of freedom. That's who we are as Americans. So I challenge you. Join that race. It's more than coming to this meeting every month. It's going to your neighbors and say, I know a candidate like this man running in District 107. I know a candidate, you got to meet him. It's supporting this young lady, right? I can call you young. They told me I was 59, born in 59. See, this young lady, all over the state. She was in Jacksonville. She lives in Tampa. She's here tonight. Support her. Pick a candidate and make a stand. We can't afford to let this drip through our fingers. My analogy is this, and then I'll open to questions. We are nothing more than spoiled children given the greatest gift civilization has ever known, and we squandered it. And like the prodigal son, we've gone out and we weed away our freedom, gave it to Washington, D.C. to squander it, call it health care reform, stealing our sovereignty, calling it cap and trade. Now we are going to have to earn it. Now we have got to pick up that musket. We have got to pick up that Constitution. We've got to read it. We've got to understand it. We have to teach our children what it means. And then we might have a chance. So the next 200 years might be better than the last 200 years. I believe in you, ladies and gentlemen. I believe in you, the individual. What frustrated me in the last presidential election is I had 6 Republicans standing up and go, I'm the next Ronald Reagan. No, I'm the next Ronald Reagan. No, I'm not. You know what? I'm tired of the Ronald Reagan thing. You are the Ronald Reagan. You're the Paul Revere. The buck stops with you and your dinner table, and what are you going to do about it? Ronald Reagan was all about the individual, not big government. So standing up in front of a crowd saying I'm the next Ronald Reagan is an oxymoron, if you ask me. Because he believed in you, I believe in you, the individual. I didn't really have anything prepared to say because I want to go to this town hall meeting as soon as I'm done, if you don't mind. But at this point, I would like to open the floor to your questions. Yes, ma'am.
Where do you have your dinner parties?
Where do I have my dinner parties? We're going to have it at the oldest restaurant in Dania called Tropical Acres. The first one is on the 17th of April. Go to my website, LowryForCongress.com, sign up, and hang out with conservative people. We do accept liberals, but they're not going to get any dessert. Next question, please. Yes, sir.
What's your feeling about flat tax and getting rid of this whole mess that we have right now?
What's my feeling on flat tax? Well, I think this is a great week to talk about that. The first thing I would do, because it's going to be difficult to revamp the tax system as it is, no matter if you go flat, fair, or what have you. But I think if we just make one small change, you can revamp the whole system. Get rid of withholding. Make them write that check on April 15th. Don't seduce them into thinking that, oh, you're going to get free money back. Isn't it funny how they've done that? They've twisted it to thinking that it's their money. It's not, it's your money. I got to believe if you write that check on April 15th, a whole lot of less people are going to be wanting to write that check. So the first thing we ought to do is think about the withholding. I support the flat tax. However, there's caveats to that. You understand the caveats because you have to make it fair. I'm vehemently opposed to a VAT tax, value-added tax. That's the next step that you're going to see coming out of this administration because there's no other way to pay for the monstrosity they've passed called health care reform. Next question.
Next question.
Sir.
Oil. Are you in favor of drilling within 20 miles of the beaches? And why not?
Sir, an interesting article in The Economist just last month was they took the progression, chronological progression of rigs. Do you know Mother Earth burps more oil than we spill?
I know.
Number one. Number two, they're actually a sanctuary. People out, they have all the fishing tournaments in Louisiana by the oil rigs. And they're sinking ships out here, which I dive on, I'm an avid diver, on an artificial reef, yet they won't have an oil platform. Florida should be a sovereign state. We should be able to do what we want to do off of our shores. I say drill. I say bring those jobs here. If we do that, not only will we create jobs, we'll lower the property taxes, right? Which means more people will come here and business will actually foster and reproduce and grow. What a concept. I don't think government can create jobs, but government can get out of our way. And by getting out of our way for drilling, we'll create jobs, recover our economy, and not damage our beaches. We also have a bunch of natural gas out there. And I think we ought to be tapping into that too. Yes?
What percentage of the voters in District 20 are registered Democrats?
What percentage of voters are listed a registered Democrat? Too many. But that's okay. I don't look at it that way. I look at it, we're all American. So don't upset them. Tell them about me. But the stat is it's almost a 2-to-1 ratio. We're plus 18 on that whatever scale they call that. But here's the deal. If every Democrat, well, let me put it the other way. If every registered Republican showed up in November and half of the independents went to the Republican and showed up and only half of the Democrats showed up, we win. And I think there's going to be a lot of Democrats that are upset and are just going to stay home, just like the GOP people stayed home at the last election. They are disenchanted. I see it daily. In fact, I have a Democrats for Lowry Club just started up. That's actually growing faster than any other part of my campaign. Go figure. So the thing is, I understand that most people are conservative in nature. And if you don't believe that, just watch how you raise your child. You don't raise your child by giving them everything they want. You raise them to say, well, that you have to have an allowance. You actually help out with chores. You're actually going to be a responsible citizen at home. That's how people raise their children. So I don't understand the disconnect with how they want the freebie from the government to have a nanny state. It's disingenuous. It's not consistent with who we are as Americans. So when I put it down to a family level, I'm very successful in educating the Democrat or the liberal that they are actually more conservative than they think they are, once you get behind the labels. Yes, ma'am.
I can't get many of my friends to come to a meeting such as this. Do you have a video clip or something on YouTube that I can send out, attach the link and send it out to my friends, so at least they have a chance, they'll get out and they'll vote in the primary and in November.
We're actually going multimedia. We're releasing another video. I think it was released today, wasn't it? About the town hall.
4 hours ago.
You actually got, we just recorded it. So you just got a little bit of it today because of 13, Stripes 13. Okay. But the question is, how do you get people to these meetings? I use the Billy Club. And handcuffs works pretty good. Don't get the ones with the fuzzy, they chafe. But the thing is, if you invite them, go to the website, but it's really through your relationship. A lot of it is just you trust your neighbor before you trust a stranger, right? So basically you want to just befriend them and say, listen, come over to my house, and when they're over there, flip on the computer and watch a YouTube. And I try to keep them all within a couple minutes because it's funny. We're such an instant gratification. If you look at I look at the YouTube and it says 8 minutes. Oh, I'm not going to do the 8-minute thing. I'll do the 1 minute thing. You know, isn't it funny? But yes, we're doing that.
On your website?
On my website, LowryForCongress.com. Sir.
Yes, part of the reason I believe we're in this situation is been a long-term, multi-year plan by progressives to subvert the Constitution, to erode our rights. I want to know what you're going to do to get to put in place a long-term effort to counter that, beginning with education, beginning with preventing the revision of history. I'd like to know what your plan is for that.
What is my plan to stop the freight train called progressivism, which started in 1903 and was catapulted and supported by both parties, especially through the Roosevelt years, the Johnson's war on poverty, and now, of course, Obama's freebie called health care. Is that a pretty good recap? The first thing you got to do before you turn a ship is you got to stop it. And the first thing we got to do is understand there's 435 seats available in November. Not 40. Don't read the press. The heck with the press. 435 seats are available. And what makes you think that this 650,000 people in this district mean anything less than a 650,000 in Nancy Pelosi's district? Nothing. You are just as important. Get constitutional representative. You vote for Mr. Sansaric. You vote for Ed Lynch next week. You vote for gentlemen like this so when you go to Tallahassee, and Ms. Nunes, when she goes to Tallahassee, states' rights are protected. We got to shrink the federal government. So here's what my plan is. The first thing is, there ought to be a law in the books that if you have got to read the bill, I know it's silly, but I think we ought to mandate and certify that whoever's voting on it should read it. And the second thing is, if you pass it, you've got to abide by it. In other words, Debbie just voted herself out of the health care bill. She doesn't take part in that. She did not support H.R. 615. But it's all good for you and not good enough for her. So once you start that, they ought to have Congress take part of Social Security if you want that fixed. You ought to have what's called the law of suffrage. And it was one of the last laws taken off the books of the states because it had this negative connotation with the suffragettes and the civil rights. And the law of suffrage in the last Commonwealth, which was Virginia to drop it, went like this. You can't vote unless you own property. Now, I understand there's a lot of people, this young man doesn't own much property, he should be able to vote, he's over 18, but you got to suffer the consequences. Back to the flat tax. What a concept. If everybody paid the tax, maybe everybody wouldn't be so happy about voting for legislation to get the freebie, because there is no such thing.
One follow-up question.
Sir.
This points have a lot of merit, but you're one person. What are you going to do to build a coalition across the 435 opportunities that you say exist, so that you're not the one voice in the wilderness?
On the Joe Citizen Show on every Saturday when I share it with Mr. Sansaric, Corey Portier. I'm also there with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West and Ed Lynch. We've been called the Band of Brothers. Now, I don't want to room with them. I did go to Haiti with Ed, but that was a different thing. But there are people out there with similar mindset. And just pay attention to Ryan. And Iowa? No, Indiana. John Ryan. No. There's congressmen up there and women that understand what we need to do. Paul, I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you. Paul Ryan. These people understand what we need to do. There's resources up there. When I was in DC just last month, I went into the Heritage Foundation for 2 days. Spent 2 days, what an incredible institution that is. All the resources you could possibly imagine at your fingertips to help correct what they've had in place for over 100 years at the fault of both parties. We really have to change the mindset, because think about what conservatism is. Conservatism to me has almost been hijacked, just like the Democratic Party has been hijacked by the progressives. Everybody's calling themselves a Reagan conservative. What is a conservative? It's called less government. So think about that. Think about what less government really means. More responsibility on you. The question is, are we willing to accept that? And so that it's going to be not only, in fact, I was told by Dick Morris just last week when we were on the phone with him. He says, be more worried about the right than the left. So it's going to be a battle, and it's going to be fun, and I'm ready to go. Yes, ma'am.
How can we ever get term limits passed? And also, how can we get the congressmen to accept the same health care that they impose upon us?
You vote them out.
But no, we gotta vote that thing in for legislation that they're not willing to, they're not going to vote for that. How are we
Well, then you vote them out. I'm going to participate in the health care bill if I go to Congress, when I go to Congress. I will participate in Social Security when I go to Congress. And I'll make sure my brother and his sisters up there will do the same. I will fight for that. I will also fight for term limits. When I announced my candidacy, when I first put up my website, the first issue was term limits. That was March of last year. I believe in no more than 3. 6 years is enough to spend in Washington, D.C. It's called representative. It's an active verb, not something to strive for and call yourself. So absolutely. But you've got to exercise the 4-letter word called vote. I'm sorry for spitting on this man. See, now, if we were at a Tea Party, I would have just been criticized for spitting on this man. Yes, ma'am.
Well, you just mentioned that Congress should not exempt themselves. And I think one of the representatives from Alabama suggested that if the budget is not balanced, that there should be a 5% pay cut. Well, I would submit also staff should be cut by 5%, and their remaining staff their salary should be cut by 5%. And every year, because they don't hurt the way that we do when they pass this type of legislation.
Right.
They expand and get bigger, and we're the ones that are paying for it and getting hurt. So I would submit to you that some penalty has to be placed on them.
Penalty on, yes. I will take one more. I agree with you, 100%.
I don't think you're going to take one more.
I'm going to take one.
Last question.
Last question. No? Yes.
I feel like the comments that question. Totally afraid to defend the Democrats because after voting, I was in the precinct. My boss is Democrat, yet he voted Republican. We tease each other a lot so much. We Democrats and everything. So anyway, I sort of share that with you that just because they are labeled Democrats, a lot of them did vote Republican. The question I have is pretty much back to the same. What can we do at this point? Things like education, like Dade County. Now, I'm only repeating PSA. 2 high schools have approved the Quran to be part of their curriculum. If they can approve that, they can approve my Bible. So I had a concern about that. Just when I came to this country, I asked.
Question, ma'am.
I asked them why they're so successful. They said because we invested in our children. And that was the question, is that we have to invest in school.
Well, remember back to the point of how conservative are you really? I don't believe the federal government should be in the education business. I think if anything, it should be on a local, if maybe a state level, but certainly not the federal level. Because they are not in touch with what's happening in your classroom right here in Cooper City or Pembroke Pines or Sunrise. They have no clue. But he does. Mr. Sim, he knows. And this gentleman right here that we're running for the state, and Ms. Nunez, she knows because she lives here and she sees what's happening in schools because her children are going to those schools. It should not be a federal issue. So I'm all about shrinking the federal government and returning that power back to the states. But the problem is the states are seduced by the cash that comes from Washington. It's free money, and they don't have to go back to the constituents and say, hey, we just built a sidewalk to nowhere, like Debbie just did. And it's in her brochure, believe it or not. But you see, she's not held accountable because the people from Idaho and Indiana paid for it. Whereas if you're paying for it, you're going to hold the local politician accountable for it. Politics should be local, not on a federal level. Thank you for having me. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to go to the Debbie land. Wish me luck.
Good luck.
Don't you love the energy? If you don't send somebody like him to Congress, who would you send to Congress? Next up, we have Commissioner Tynan from School Board, and again, I'll remind you, South Broward Hospital District, ex-chairman of Broward Republican Executive Committee and ex-president of this club. He's going to come over and tell us about his campaign for a little bit, and then he'll introduce Pam Bondi.
Well, I was promised I could give a 30-second commercial for me, and I'm going to try and be short because we're a little behind the time. We've probably all seen today a lot of news about the county commission race, and I think that's maybe stealing some thunder of what's actually going on in the school board. In fact, you're happy you got two fine Republicans running to try and take the Debbie Wasserman Rubin seat, and I think you want to spend some time, since most of us all live in that district, spend some time talking to Steve and Chris later to see who you like, and anyone is an upgrade. I wanted to talk a moment about school board just ever so briefly. As you know, the governor appointed me to fill in for someone who is probably going to spend some time in jail. Quite frankly, as a citizen, I think it's required that that occur. But I've been given a unique opportunity to serve in her place, and I've been doing that since September. As you probably also saw, the fact that she has resigned her office has created a new vacancy, and now there has to be a special election this summer. Like a lot of people in this room, like Steve, who I know ran down to the county office today, my paperwork's sitting in the car ready to file for tomorrow. So I will be announcing for school board. I'll do it right. We'll have a big party. Tynan knows how to throw a party, so we'll do that. I just don't know exactly what day yet. We're going to decide that tomorrow, and everybody's invited. We'll have some fun. But I did want to talk just for a minute to let everybody know that there will be a contested election. Right now there is one opponent. It's a nonpartisan race, although the other girl happens to be a Democrat. And I'm expecting at least maybe one or two other people to jump in. So it should be fun. It should be entertaining. But I know with your help, we'll get there. I did want to make an announcement tonight. It's not official yet. I'll be doing it somewhere tomorrow. I'm sure it'll annoy a couple of people on the school board with the issue of ethics being so prevalent today. We've seen the county commission have a proposal to adopt a new ethics code for the county commission. Well, most of us were out having a good time this week, and I actually drafted one for the school board. I'll be submitting that tomorrow to my fellow board members to make us all a little more honest in how we do our job. So, that's what I'm doing. But now I have another job to do, and I was joking with Linda that, who was going to have the better introduction today. All we could say when she walked by, that was great. And I'm going to take a little different tact and hopefully let the candidate give you a little more of her background. I want to talk about the job for a second. For those of you who know me, I'm a lawyer. And this is a job for the Attorney General where you need to be a lawyer first. That's the first requirement. And so you'll see some fine Republicans that are running for that happen to be lawyers. Well, how do you tell them apart? You need to look at what they've done. Have they been in the courtroom? This candidate is a trial attorney. She spent the last 18 years as a prosecutor in the 13th Judicial Circuit, which I'm correct is Tampa-based. So in the courtroom, I assume just about every day, unlike me who barely gets there. I'm a lawyer, but I don't get to go to court that often. I like it that way. So she spent the past 18 years there. Included in her job description, she served as a felony bureau chief, which means she helped manage other lawyers, a key member of the internal homicide, vehicular homicide, and DUI manslaughter committees. She also sat on the executive committee responsible for budget, personnel, and legal strategies. As I said, back to the job. The job for the Attorney General is basically running the largest law firm in the state. It is big, it has lots of offices, has lots of lawyers, lots of employees. It does civil work, it does criminal work. There's a little bit of everything. So it's important to get a lawyer who has some balance in their career and understands not only how to try a case, but also how to manage the office. Some interesting background, and you know, most of us as lawyers always have some interesting cases. It's always nice to hear some other people's horror stories or good job, but on Pam's website, and Pam's website indicates that her investigative and courtroom experience came into play with nationally celebrated cases, including putting Adam Davis on death row for the murder of Vicki Robinson, convicting Melvin Givens of first-degree murder for the stabbing death of a local NBC News producer whose name is Danielle Cipriani. What's interesting with my background as an ethics attorney, I like this. I saw it. She served on the bar's ethics committee as the vice chair in Tampa. We probably know lawyers that know each other. And probably the only problem I have with her resume is she's a Gator. I'm sorry, I just can't go with that. Without further ado, I give it to Pam Bondi.
He had to do that about the Gators. I knew he did. And Kevin, thank you for everything you do. I come from a long line of educators, and you are making a tremendous sacrifice and a difference in our community by doing what you're doing. So thank you very much. As you were told, for the last 18 years, I have been a prosecutor with the State Attorney's Office in Tampa. For the last 6 years, I've been a part-time legal expert for Fox. And for the last year, we've all had to look on in horror as Washington has bailed out Wall Street, ignored all of us on Main Street, and watched unemployment go to an all-time high. And Jay, just so you know, Fox is not fair and balanced. They're right. But today, we face unprecedented challenges here in Florida, and we cannot continue with politics as usual. Foreclosures, 400,000 plus foreclosures this past year. That's up 446% since 2006. We've lost over 285,000 jobs, 75,000 in the construction industry. And we have to restore Florida to the most prosperous state in the country. It's all tied into public safety, and that is your role as Attorney General. Your Attorney General is your chief legal officer for the state of Florida. For the last 18 years, I've taken on thugs who have attacked our children, con artists who have stolen from our seniors, and murderers, countless murderers, who have victimized children, adults, women, and families. I've also continued to keep those murderers in prison by handling all their parole hearings. My opponent has suggested that political experience is more important than actually being on the front lines of justice. Well, to that person, I'd say, you've never been there in the middle of the night and had to tell a mother she'll never see her child again. Or you've never helped a senior fight to regain their life savings. Or you've never stood in court with countless murder victims' families when a judge imposed life in prison or even the death penalty when warranted. We need an Attorney General who knows what tough means when we have to get tough on the front lines of justice. And that is why I am running for office. It's bad enough to the north of us, way north of us. We have a liberal president and a liberal speaker who have run roughshod over our jobs, our health care, and our welfare, and our wallets. They pass laws they can't pay for, health care reforms they can't speak for, and I'll tell you what, security that they certainly cannot vouch for. They act as if government knows best, and you and I don't even count or exist. With all due respect, Mr. President and Speaker Pelosi, we've seen enough, we've had enough, and we have heard enough. In Florida, if I have my way, your way, we're fighting back. and I'm sure you'll have questions about this, but I'll tell you this healthcare reform is absolutely ridiculous and unconstitutional. And as a practicing lawyer for almost 20 years, I would be honored to sue the federal government. I'm running because I will never be afraid to speak out for what we believe in, regardless of what the latest political poll shows or my long-term political health. I'm running. I don't see this as an open cabinet seat and I have a law degree. I'm running not to win a political position. I'm running to win back Florida. I want to be the best Attorney General we've had in this country and then come right back home to Tampa. To tell you a little bit more about myself, I am a fourth-generation Floridian. I'm conservative, I'm pro-business, I'm pro-life, and I am pro-Second Amendment. I believe that government does not have to be bigger to be better. Quite the opposite. My Florida political hero, Jeb Bush. My personal heroes, my amazing family, who are from a long line of educators. My grandparents, my parents, my aunts, my uncles. My sister was the youngest principal in Hillsborough County, and I'm very, very proud of that. I'm a real prosecutor. I'm a real lawyer that knows that a court of law is no place for on-the-job training. The stakes are way too high, and the consequences for failure are far too real. None of us can afford more failure. We should no longer excuse it, and we must no longer accept it. As Attorney General, know that I will not be outworked, outlawyered, or outdone in the defense of the people of our great state. I will fight for what we believe in. As a cabinet member, I will apply my conservative principles and values to all that I do. I will focus on the economy, because when we're not working, not much else works either. I will help our businesses grow jobs instead of punishing them with red tape and multiple regulations. I will not back down from my conservative principles and responsibilities. That is the way I was raised. That is the way I was trained, and that is the way I will lead. Because we are not the party of Obama and Pelosi. We are the party of Lincoln and Reagan, and it's about time we start acting like it. If you honor me with your support, I will fight for you, I will stand for you, and I will stand with you. The campaign for Florida's future is on, and I would be so honored to continue this fight with you by my side. Thank you so much for inviting me here tonight. Thank you so much.
Questions?
Yes, sir.
I like your stand on the Second Amendment. I'm all for it. And I'm an RA, et cetera. A lot of people know that. For me, that isn't me. I'm also a strong believer in the 10th Amendment.
Isn't it?
That disturbs the dickens out of me.
As James Madison said, the powers delegated to the federal government are few and defined. They are clearly in violation of the 10th Amendment. Anybody can get up here and say that. I've done the research. They're trying to tell us that this is under the Commerce Clause. It's ridiculous. It's not. They are trying to make us, obviously, purchase something, take affirmative action and purchase something, and then fine us and tax us if we don't purchase it. And that is a violation of the law. In my mind, it is not even a close call. Yes, ma'am. And by the way, I think we're the ones that bought up all the ammunition after Obama got elected, so. Very hard. Go ahead, sir.
This oil drilling situation, does Florida have the ability legally to start drilling anytime they so desire? Or do you have to wait for Obama to give an okay?
That is a cabinet decision, actually, and you know, in 2006, our cabinet, and that is another vital role of your Attorney General, your Chief Financial Officer, your Agricultural Commissioner, and your Governor. And this is the first time, by the way, in over 60 years that all 4 of these seats have been open. I was approached about running for this office because people felt I was the best equipped to take on the Democrats in a debate and in a general election, and I can't wait to debate them on these issues. That is a cabinet decision that will come up in 2010. I have done the research, the environmentalists have done the research. It is completely safe. We have to promote Florida. We have to become energy efficient ourselves. We have to become self-reliant as a state. If somebody's going to do it, it might as well be Florida. And that's a cabinet decision. So yes, sir, we will make that decision in Florida.
And the best thing to do is drill for the gas and the oil, and the rest of this stuff can come later. But the oil, I mean, it would make us a lot of money, and it would be the right thing to do.
Absolutely. It would bring countless jobs to our state. Again, we've got to become energy efficient, first of all, as a country. And absolutely, that's great advice. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Since you come from the capital of the foreclosure lawyers of Florida, meaning Tampa, 90% of the foreclosures in our HOAs come via Tampa. What do you propose to do as Attorney General to stop the nonsense? This is the nonsense. A house gets foreclosed. You're the banker. You send a notice to him. You scare him out of the house with a thing called the lis pendens. He walks away from the house. I'm running an HOA of 307 houses with 49 of them completely empty. 49 of them are half an inch away from public sale. The banks refuse to sell them. Why? Simple. They want to wait for them to go back up.
That's right.
In the meantime, the banks only have to pay me 1%
That's right.
of the mortgage value. Okay. Matt Hudson is working on changing the law. You as Attorney General, can't you take the banks and force them to foreclose?
Well, no, you're a member of the executive branch as the Attorney General. You can't force the banks to foreclose, but what you can do is you can go after all these mortgage fraud cases, all these rescue fraud cases that are out there. There are a tremendous amount of them. I believe we have to reallocate some resources and focus more on that. I'll tell you what, my brother-in-law is a bankruptcy attorney, and he says, unfortunately, his business is booming. It's horrible what's happening to us.
Yeah,
and the banks are taking all of our, you're right, they're taking our homes. I've never seen anything like it.
It isn't that they're taking the houses. They're not taking the houses is the problem. They get up to the point of foreclosure and they stop.
Oh, instead of expediting the process.
No, forget about expediting. Completing the process. Just complete the process. Do you know what we're trying? You ever heard of a reverse foreclosure?
Yes.
Okay, I've got 5 houses in the court. You know what I was told by the judge? You're going to have to wait because I have 35,000 foreclosures on the docket. So my cure for the 35,000 dockets, his words. We're going to force you to go to arbitration before we'll even talk to you about foreclosure. Now, who controls the court? Doesn't the Attorney General have a little...
No, that's our lawmakers, unfortunately. But I don't know if you saw, there was a recent article on the cover of the New York Times, and it talked about that, how foreclosures are clogging our court system, and they're just at a standstill. Now, I know there's some legislation up before session now where they're trying to get a separate court to handle these foreclosures. What's going to come of that? I don't know. You know, that's a question for the lawmakers.
Because it comes into effect next January if it's passed.
Jack, my request is not to argue.
And it's, well, you're preaching to the choir though. It is. It's clogging up our court system on the civil side, and it's preventing us from trying criminal cases because it's just clogging the court system. So if you go back, I'll try to find that New York Times article for you, but it was about what you were talking about.
I'm looking for HB 617 is the bill. Jeanette?
Go ahead.
617. Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, good evening everyone. I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
As our next Attorney General. We know the drug traffic is very heavy in Florida. And considering the Caribbean countries, Bahamas, and also all the former presidents, mostly in Haiti, who have been involved in some investigation about drug trafficking. What will be your policy about drugs in order to protect not only the Floridians but also the youth against this problem of drugs?
Well, I have worked on countless wiretaps involving drug trafficking. I can't tell you how many drug trafficking cases I've prosecuted in my 20 years. We have to control our borders. We have to keep these drugs from being imported into our country. One case I can tell you about, it's public now, we were doing a wiretap for months and months, and when we had information that this, you know, the huge things that cars are transported on, the trailers by the dealers, we had information that drugs were coming in that way, and they were being transported in those carriers. So they did a stop on the car, they had the drug dogs hit on the car, nothing. Yet they knew from these phone conversations that something was going on. Well, they kept the investigation going, later stopped it. These drug dealers have become so sophisticated that they insulated this car carrier where drug dogs couldn't even hit on it. When they emptied that out, not only was it packed, I wish I could show you the pictures, with, kilos and kilos of cocaine, but automatic weapons. And that all goes hand in hand in the drug trade. Not only that, to take it a step further, gangs are alive and thriving in our state. And these aren't kids. These aren't kids. This is organized crime. And they make their money by dealing in drugs, by trafficking in drugs, by importation of drugs, and by all kinds of racketeering, chop shops. So it's all tied into public safety. But I'm adamantly, state courts do a very good job as well as the federal authorities at prosecuting drug dealers, and I am all for maximum penalties for drug dealers. And that includes these pill mills. These aren't addicts walking in these pill mills. These are dealers who are buying this stuff, going out and reselling it to our kids on the street. Everybody can talk about pill mills. Well, I've seen them in action. We've sent in undercover officers with cast on their arms. And we thought, well, this is good. We're making this really realistic. Let them go in and ask for some drug without even questioning their health. They're writing a prescription for OxyContin. So then we thought, wow, this is getting easy. We take the cast off, send them back in. They don't even see the doctor. These waiting rooms are packed with dealers. They're writing, these doctors don't even see them. They're signing prescriptions left and right. So that all goes hand in hand with drug trafficking, and we have got to shut it down in our state, and we've got to devote the resources to that if we're going to make this the most prosperous state to live and the safest place to raise our children. Yes, sir.
You opened your remarks this evening talking about public safety, and you addressed several issues. One of the things you didn't address, that you just spoke to, was dealing with drug crime and gangs. Let me suggest that you include that in your opening remarks because it's pretty important. The next thing I think that's going to be very key for any Attorney General is going to be able to address the issues of the constitutional challenges with Obamacare. You didn't speak to your credentials and your experience that give you credibility to actually carry out that kind of legislative litigation. Could you address that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only are drugs, I could go on and on about the role of the Attorney General, gangs, identity theft, mortgage fraud, home health care fraud. I could talk an hour about each of those subjects. Drugs. There are so many serious issues affecting our state today. You're absolutely right. I have prosecuted in my 20 years virtually all of the cases that the Attorney General would be handling. My experience that would provide me the knowledge and expertise to lead our state in suing the federal government is that I am actually a practicing lawyer. I am a trial lawyer. I have tried countless jury trials, and I have practiced law my entire career. I've worked hand in hand with the Attorney General's office on my appeals, on my murder cases, on my death penalty cases. I'm familiar with what an Attorney General's opinion can do. We put the wrong person in that office, an Attorney General can write an opinion that can affect the stock market. It can shut down our businesses. And I'm actually a practicing lawyer. I've done my own research. I'm used to doing research, and I would be honored to go to court and stand up and argue a case with other Republican Attorney Generals in this country against the federal government. I haven't been sitting behind a desk my career in Tallahassee. I've been practicing law for 20 years. Yes, sir.
There are several organizations that are popping up under these names like Americans for Peace, Council for American Islamic Relationship. And they are under the disguise of peaceful organizations. However, several of them are radical Islamic-backed organizations. They go to Capitol Hill, they go in, they demonstrate, our lawmakers meet with them. What is it that you can do if elected as an Attorney General to prevent such organizations from, doing the damage that they're doing?
Work hand in hand with the United States Attorney's Office. And I can tell you, as being a practicing prosecutor, we have a tremendous relationship. Most of the issues you're speaking of, Jay, are federal issues. But we would work hand in hand with the Attorney General's office and with the 20 elected state attorneys as well. But even the state attorneys, that's more of a United States Attorney issue. And I've heard that. I'm not very familiar with that issue, but I'm learning more about it, and I'd like to talk to you more about it. But that's very real and going on in our state and in our country.
Last question, if anybody has.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the biggest concerns about the health care bill is the drastic cuts to Medicare. Now this morning, just by accident, I happened to be watching television, and one of the things that was brought up is that the hospice care is cut out of existence, and it is not going to happen 2 or 3 years down the road. It's happening within the next few months. What can we do about something like that?
We can sue the federal government and tell them that this health care bill is unconstitutional. That's what happens when you have this crazy bill. If Scott Brown didn't speak volumes for what the American people wanted and were against this bill, I don't know what did.
Nobody even knew about
That's it. More people, I know, more people came out to vote, and they're all Democrats, of course, in Massachusetts, in his race than they did for the presidential race. Can you believe that? And you're right, and that's what was wrong with that bill, and that's why they wanted to cram it through so fast. And just to add one more point, I mean, and hospice is so incredibly important to our country. But one other aspect, just let me talk about this for one moment. The government-funded abortions, they say, well, President Obama signed an executive order saying, well, I'm not going to enforce that. Let me tell you, those government-funded abortions are still in that bill. And any lawyer right out of law school knows you can rescind an executive order like that. It doesn't take an act of Congress. It doesn't take anything to rescind an executive order. So how that got through is beyond me as well.
I know, I will. I have a question.
trillion is one of the biggest things the Attorney General does besides economic crimes, etc. When will or how does one get about working with the Department of Children and Family Services, the Agency for Healthcare Administration, ACA, and Mufuku? So when you go to like right here in Broward County, Wilton Manors Nursing Home, you don't have to wait the 3 entities to come in to arrest the CNA that was abusing a demented elderly resident that was there. I mean, to me, it seems like there's so much bureaucratic tape. I spoke to Representative Hudson, Galvano, Weatherford, etc., because I work for ACA, to see this constantly going on, where you have to have 3 entities, the time you get there.
Refer it.
Yes.
It all has to be referred. You're right. It's a duplication of resources. There's so much red tape involved, and that's a great point. We've got to cut that out. You're right. It can't even come to the Attorney General's office without a referral. And the Attorney General is the criminal investigative agency involved. And you're absolutely right. And that's one of the things that I believe is very broken with our system.
Now I'm going to invite Commissioner John Sims to the podium so that he can introduce Dr. Anthony Japort.
Turn this down so it doesn't squeal back. I'm sure you can all hear me just fine. Before I introduce Dr. Tony Japort, I just want to announce here tonight that I will be running for re-election in Cooper City and would like your support. I'm a member of the Davie Cooper City Republican Club and also the Broward Republican Executive Committee. I've already got 2 people running against me. I'm not well liked by my colleagues on the dais, but I'm not there to be liked by them. I'm there to do a job for each and every one of my residents, including you. And that is to keep our taxes low, to keep our government in check, and to keep our government small. And what affects you the most? Your local government. Your little city, your town, your county, that affects you the most. That affects your wallet the most. It affects your daily life the most. And I believe that people in our small cities, there's 31 or 2 municipalities in Broward County, need to wake up and realize that the most important race this November is their local municipal government. My attitude is government is a corporation. We're the board of directors. In fact, if you look at our charter, it's the municipal corporation of the city of Cooper City. Well, our shareholders are our residents and our business owners, and if we don't do what it takes to take care of those people, the city's going to fail in more ways than one. I can tell you horror stories. My colleagues on the commission wanting to buy property for a post office that would have never been built or existed. Fancy water meters that would have taken 35 years to pay off. A new city hall for $13 million in Montana, which is the only development in Broward County. And we can't get 3 people on a good night in our commission chambers. It's all about the developers, the lobbyists, the big money, and we've got to stop that nonsense. Otherwise, how are we going to pay for it? By raising our ad valorem taxes. Our biggest issue right now is pension funds. We have 4 different pension funds in Cooper City. Our general employees pension fund is $6 million in the hole. It took me 6 months just to get it on the table to discuss it. And of course, the commission didn't want to take a little bit of money that we had in our water and sewer enterprise and bring it up to parity so that we wouldn't have to raise taxes. Well, let me tell you what they did. They raised taxes 18% over the last 3 years on top of a 23.5% fire assessment fee. My colleagues on the dais have raised taxes in our little city 40% in the last 3 years. I have voted against every budget except for one, and the reason I supported that budget was because I finally got a majority vote to increase our police and fire to the maximum complement allowed by our BSO contract. So those are just some of the examples that your municipality, where you live, directly affect you. And so I would ask for your support in the way of help, donations. Money's tight. You know, signs have gone up from $2 to $5. You know, the cost of this stuff on the table is just tremendous compared to what it was 2-3 years ago. And with that, I just appreciate Jay and his colleagues for allowing me to be here. I want to introduce to you a good friend of the Southwest Broward Republican Organization and Republicans all over Broward County, Dr. Tony Japour. He's running for State House District 107, actually in Miami-Dade County. He was invited here to talk about his message. I actually have some relatives that live in his district that I will get to support him. Dr. Japour received his bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan and his medical degree from Northwestern. He's a Harvard Medical School researcher. He's also done some research with Abbott Laboratories where he developed drugs to combat HIV and AIDS. He also assisted in developing preparedness action plans in the event of any type of avian or global influenza outbreak. The guy's a smart guy. He's got the knowledge to run a business. He actually has served on many civic boards. He's a president of Japour and Associates Medical and Scientific Consulting. So right there, when I talk about the commission being the board of directors of the business in regards to a municipality, he's got the business sense to be able to take care of those shareholders, his constituents, his business owners, all Republicans and Democrats alike in his district. He's also a, shall we say, an art guru. He's got AJ Japour Gallery. It's an internet-based business that deals in contemporary fine art, so he's a connoisseur of fine arts. Dr. Japour's initiatives are education, taxes, healthcare, homeowners insurance, first responders, jobs, and insurance. And with that, I will now allow Dr. Japour to detail his plan to address these issues. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Tony Japour.
Thank you all for coming. I want to thank Jay for inviting me. I have to give a speech next week at Keep Us Gang Republican Club. So I'm using you all as a practice for that. So afterwards you can, please, immediately afterwards, please tell me what you think about my speech. First I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background. Then I'm going to tell you a bit about my political philosophy and why I'm running to be a state representative. And finally, why you should support my candidacy. First, as John said, I was born and educated in Michigan. I moved to Florida in 2002. I received my bachelor's degree at the University of Michigan. I'm actually the first person in my family to go to college. I did my medical studies at both Harvard and Northwestern, and after completing my training in internal medicine, I specialized in infectious diseases and joined the faculty at Harvard Medical School, where I worked on the AIDS virus with my own hands. To me, AIDS was like World War III. Anybody with a brain got on board, and so I did. This is in the days when there were no effective treatments for AIDS, and I worked on figuring out how the virus mutates around the drugs. Then in 1996, I left Harvard and joined Abbott Laboratories with a great opportunity to develop a brand new drug for AIDS. One that we got through the FDA in 4 years, which was a record time, and is now $1 billion drug. It's used as part of the AIDS cocktail that many of you probably heard about. When I started researching in AIDS, patients had to take 36 pills a day. Today they take 1 pill a day. It's absolutely incredible. But following the tragic events of 9/11, I decided, and actually right after 9/11 there were the anthrax attacks, which most people forget that we actually had 2 terror attacks, one right after another. But after that happened in September and October of 2001, I made the decision that public service was going to be my next stop. In 2002, I was recommended to President Bush to be Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration by my colleagues. And meanwhile, I started to get more politically involved, hosting parties at my home for various political candidates, and meeting a lot of great people who are very politically minded, like Jay. I've served on a number of committees on Miami Beach, and I'm currently on the Public Safety Committee. And over the years, I've hosted a number of art events at my home and charity events for children, health, education, and welfare of children. And presently, I am on the faculty of both FIU and the University of Miami Medical School. So why do I take all this time to tell you about my background? I do this because I'm a person that's not afraid of taking on challenges. I'm a person who's result-oriented and I get the job done, and because I've actually been doing public service for my whole career. And finally, because leveraging my experience and knowledge in the medical area will help all the people in the state of Florida. So how is my political philosophy informed? And this was asked of me during one of my White House interviews. My political philosophy is informed by Thomas Jefferson, who I know is a favorite, many of you here at the SWBRO Republican Club. As a primary author of the Declaration of Independence, he promoted the ideals of republicanism as a countervailing force to imperialism. He was a strong supporter of states' rights over federal rights and a strictly limited federal government. Indeed, Thomas Jefferson would be rolling in his grave with the passage of this recent federal health care bill, now known as a misnomer, Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, which increases our dependence on our government and increases the government control in our lives, and quite frankly deprives each individual the right to self-sufficiency. Jefferson's social and political philosophy emphasized honor, manliness, self-reliance, courage, moral integrity, hospitality. All of these I've attempted to emulate in my business, community, and interpersonal relationships. And sadly, over the last 5 decades of the 20th century, I've witnessed our country increasingly become a no-liability society, one that increasingly favors an entitlement mentality, where disputes far too often wind up in court rather than settled by open dialogue and common sense. I'm stunned when I hear people say, I have the right to health care, or when they say I have the right to this, or when I say I have a right to that. These so-called new rights evolve from an entitlement mindset, which I am firmly opposed to. And here's why I'm running for the state of Florida State House. I'm running to be a representative because I believe that my experience in medicine and in business will be helpful in the legislature. The legislature is a deliberative body and needs expertise in all areas of society to craft the most important legislation for our state. Did you know that U.S. healthcare spending accounts for 6.2% of the gross domestic product? That translates to over $7,600 per person per year. In 1965, healthcare consumed only 6% of the GDP. It's not just that the gain in wages over the last several decades have gone to paying for healthcare, but the effect is that there is less money for everything else. Did you know that 1/3 of the entire state budget of Florida is healthcare? The irony of this new federal bill that's come out is it doesn't even include the word health in its title. Did you know that former Governor Bush, had a program called Florida, a Healthy State, that helped to point Medicaid mothers to a call-in system that directed them to nurse practitioners rather than using costly emergency rooms? According to some of the state reps that I've spoken to, roughly 40% of the state budget is related to some part of health or another. And having someone like me who understands how the medical enterprise works would be helpful to all the citizens of the state of Florida. Even though I would be representing Miami-Dade County, I believe that my candidacy is really for the whole state of Florida. And with your help, this is how I can win. First, we've had an amazing start. I've raised about $75,000 for my campaign and outraised my primary opponent and the incumbent by a huge margin. I will run a strategic ground game, visiting as many homes as I can, focusing our efforts on people that actually will vote. And for those reasons and a lot more, much of which is included in the pamphlets that I have given you all at the table seats there, my goal is to reduce your property taxes, to improve our educational system, to work for affordable homeowner insurance, assist the private sector in developing better jobs and protecting our environment. I hope that all of you will support my candidacy as a Republican candidate for District 107. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Questions?
How do you feel about this tenure situation
Well, in general, I think tenure as a concept is a good thing because it does give professors an opportunity to have some security. But on the other hand, there are parts of tenure that I don't believe in because it makes people lazy and they get very comfortable in their positions. Once you're a tenured professor, then you don't really have to work so hard. So I'm not familiar specifically about this bill that you're mentioning, but in general, I think tenure has pros and cons, and in general, I would be more against tenure than for. At Harvard, you're on soft dollars your whole career. Even when you're a tenured professor, you're not really tenured.